The Battle of Harama. Interview of General Mola, a nationalist general. Today, I will be interviewing General Mola about the Battle of Harama that was fought in the Spanish Civil War. Greetings, General Mola.
Greetings to you.
So, General Mola, tell me something about the Battle of Harama. What was the real intention for it?
Well, the Battle of Harama, as you know, was actually an attempt by General Franco of the Nationalists to dislodge the Republicans' lines along the river of Harama, east of Madrid.
Yes, and is there any other forces that help you in this battle?
There is actually. They are the elite Spanish legionnaires and Moroccan regulars from the Army of Africa. We were able to force the Republican Army of the Center and the international brigades, but that was the furthest that we got. After days of fighting, we failed to break through the Republicans' counterattack and resulted in losing the ground that we captured.
I see. Well, now let's expand this Battle of Harama.
Where do you want to start?
How about the preliminaries?
Well, the original plan was to take Madrid by storm by winter in 1937, but we failed, so we resolved to cut off the city by crossing the river to the southeast and then sever Madrid's communication.
Alright. And you were the overall command in this offensive attack?
Yes, I was.
And how about the plan and the other generals?
Well, the plan was to have an offensive attack across Jarama, 11 kilometers south of the capital. General Ogas was the command of the front, with General Varela exercising the command in the field. We intended the attack to coincide with an offensive by Franco's Italian allies under General Mario Roata at Guadalajara, but they were not ready in time, so I decided to press ahead without them.
And how about your infantry and batteries?
The Nationalists at that time had roughly 25,000 infantry, mostly regulars, and Spanish foreign legionnaires. I also had 10 squadrons of cavalry at my disposal. They were supported by German troops from the Condor Legion, including 2 heavy machine gun battalions and tank corps under Wilhelm Ritter von Thoma and batteries of 155mm and 88mm guns.
And what were your initial objectives in this?
Well, we the Nationalists, our objective were to take the western bank of the river Jarama and to capture the heights that overlooked it. Next, we will break through the Republican positions on the high ground east of the river and take towns of Vasha Madrid and Arganda in order to sever the Madrid-Valencia road and cut off the capital to the south and east.
And the procedure? Or how did the plan go? Can you tell us in details?
Yes, of course. Well, we began the offensive on February 5 with assaults on the Republican position on the west bank of Jarama. The opening attacks took the Republicans by surprise. The Nationalists then advanced in mobile columns and overwhelmed the unprepared Republicans.
And the generals that were currently in command in these flanks, who were they?
There were 3 flanks, so we needed 3 generals for the attack. General Garcia Escames commanded the right flank to the south. General Rada commanded the left, while General Asensio commanded the center.
And how did their attack went?
Well, first, Escames attacked on February 6 at Ciempozuelos and overran the Republican forces, which lost 1,800 men, and Rada's men took La Maranosa Hill, which was 700 meters high and overlooked both banks of Jarama, and from there our troops could dominate the river crossing with artillery and machine gun fire.
And the enemies? What happened to them?
La Maranosa vainly stuck to their cliff-top defenses and died there to the last. By February 8, the west bank of Jarama was in the Nationalist hands, and then the reinforcements appeared in the east bank of Jarama. The Republic's army reorganized its defenses, forestalling any enemy crossing. In addition, heavy rain flooded the river, so it held up fighting for 2 days.
And what happened next after those 2 days without fight? What were the tactics that came in next?
The tactics that we used on February 11 was that we had a small group of Moroccan regulars and asked them to cross the river. They did eventually without being detected and crept upon one of the positions of the International Brigade near the Pindoque Railway at the Vasha Madrid. What they did was they slipped inside the enemy perimeters and silently cut the throats of the sentries, and then Nationalist cavalry followed immediately to the attack.
The Nationalist Cavalry? Who led the Nationalist Cavalry at this time, and what happened?
It was led by Baron, and they charged across the Arganda Bridge. The Republicans used their forces as much as they can. They even blew up the bridge, but fortunately for us, it held intact. There were different offensive plans at this time, like from the further south, an army attacked the village of San Marin de la Vega.
What happened to the Nationalist Army then?
They went under heavy fire, and so they crossed the river Varela in force, but the Republicans remained firmly and instead fired with artillery fire. There were counterattacks that happened, like Republicans sending in T-26 Soviet tanks, but they were blown up by the nationalist batteries.
How about the air superiority?
At first, the Republicans had the upper hand. They were composed of Soviet machines and pilots until February 13. This is the arrival of more Italian and Spanish national aircraft, and in the end, neither side had a decisive advantage in the air.
How about the Republicans? What was left of them?
The Republicans then resorted into a full attack with 50 T-26 tanks supported by infantry, artillery, and air cover, although it did not retake any lost ground. The counterattack again blooded the nationalists, and it halted our advance. We then called the 14th El Dia Triste del Jarama, the sad day.
Clearly, the Republicans are losing its battle. But what else happened?
The Republicans failed numerous counterattacks, like the counterattack under Juan Modesto from the direction of Manzanares River, the counterattacks on the 23rd of February and 27th of February. They received a lot of casualties, which settled both sides on silence.
And the aftermath of this battle or the result?
The aftermath of this battle was both sides has lost too much resources and infantry. They were also exhausted, low in ammunition and food. Although we succeeded in crossing the river, the Madrid-Valencia remained out of reach and firmly in Republican hands. This ended General Franco's hopes of cutting Madrid, and that was the end of the Battle of Jarama.